In occupied East Jerusalem, worshippers performed evening prayers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the first day of Ramadan.
Well, 200 Israeli ultra-nationalists will march through the old city in the Western Wall in occupied East Jerusalem. They demand an end to the control of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound by the Waqf Authority. That's the Islamic Endowment Authority, which administers the Muslim holy site.
In the heart of Jerusalem, a significant event is unfolding with the completion of the Third Temple on the Temple Mount, the site where Abraham once demonstrated his faith in God. As the last piece of the temple is put into place, countless rumors about an upcoming apocalypse are rising. Christians around the world are expressing deep concerns about the rise of the Antichrist and a potential catastrophic conflict that could erupt in the region. Why is this final stone considered by many to be a grave mistake in Jerusalem's ancient history? Let us look deeper into the reasons behind these fears and explore the dangerous consequences of this monumental construction. The long wait for a new temple. The Second Temple was destroyed way back in 70 AD, and since then, people have been wondering when, or even if, a new one will pop up. Some experts who spend their time digging through Bible prophecies insist this temple has to be up and running before some major end-time events described in the Bible can kick off. But what does the Bible really say about when this third temple will show up? To get the full picture, it helps to look back at the stories of the first two temples. The whole temple story starts with the very first one built to honor God. King David came up with the idea to build a luxurious house for God. But God wasn't all that interested. He was okay with something simpler, a tent, known as a tabernacle, which the Israelites could carry with them. Despite God turning down the fancy house idea, he told David his family would rule for a long time, and one of his descendants would get to build that house for God. So, King David's son, Solomon, took on the project and built what came to be known as the House of the Lord, right on a place called Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. This temple was a key spot for worship in Israel and lasted about 400 years until it was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. So, where exactly is this Temple Mount? It's located in Jerusalem on a flat area of about 36 acres sitting on Mount Moriah. This isn't just a random spot, it's packed with historical and spiritual significance. According to the Bible, this is the place where Abraham almost sacrificed his son Isaac, showing his dedication to God. Later on, King David bought this area after he got a sign from God and declared it the official worship site, saying it was the house of the Lord and the place for Israel's altar of offerings. This was the chosen spot where Solomon started building the first temple, a location God picked to be his permanent home. The idea that Israel will one day go back to its old roots and rebuild the temple has been a strong belief among many Christian and Jewish people for centuries. This hope is driven by certain promises found in the Bible. A lot of people are really into figuring out when this will happen, poring over religious texts to find any clues or markers. While the Bible doesn't spell everything out clearly, it does hint at a future temple in a few spots. Two of these hints suggest it will be a real building, and one hint is more symbolic. The ongoing fascination with the temple isn't just about spiritual beliefs. It's also tightly woven with political implications. The idea of the temple being rebuilt stirs up a lot of feelings and opinions, affecting not just local politics, but international relations too. As believers look forward to this event, it's not just a matter of faith, but also about understanding how such a significant development would impact the region and the world. This temple talk isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's a hot topic that gets a lot of people excited, hopeful, or even anxious. Whether it's about diving deep into ancient texts, discussing geopolitical impacts, or just sharing personal beliefs, the conversation about the Third Temple spans more than just building plans. It touches on deep historical roots, prophecies, and the future direction of a key world region. So, while some are waiting for construction trucks to start rolling in, others are busy debating the when, why, and how of it all, making this more than just a construction project. It's a topic that connects deeply with people's beliefs and the world's history. According to some interpretations of the book of Daniel, the end times will see an end to sacrifices. A popular belief among certain groups is that before Jesus Christ returns to earth, the Jewish community will build a new temple in Jerusalem. The idea of constructing a third temple is quite contentious and sits at the heart of a major conflict between Arabs and Israelis. This is because the proposed site for this temple, known as the Temple Mount, currently hosts the Dome of the Rock, a significant Islamic sanctuary, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, another important Islamic building. There's a possibility that the Jewish community might just set up an altar and start making sacrifices there, without actually building a whole new temple, much like they did before the Second Temple was constructed. Digging into the past for a moment, let's consider a biblical account from Ezra chapter 3, verses 1 to 6. It tells us about a time when the Israelites, feeling a mix of unity and fear due to the pressures from neighboring peoples, gathered in Jerusalem and set up an altar on its historical foundation. They began to offer burnt offerings on this altar, morning and evening, despite not having a temple. They also celebrated the Feast of Booths, according to the laws laid down in their scriptures, and continued with regular offerings according to each day's requirement, including offerings during new moons and at all the designated festivals of the Lord. This was their way of keeping their traditions alive, even without a temple structure in place. Shifting to another prophet, Ezekiel, who belonged to a priestly family, shared his detailed vision of a grand and glorious temple in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 40 to 48. This description has sparked a lot of talk and various interpretations over the years, adding layers of complexity to the understanding of prophetic visions. Ezekiel started sharing these insights before the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple by the Babylonians in 586 BC. At that time, there were false prophets reassuring the people that they were safe, that God was with them, and they had nothing to worry about. But real prophets like Jeremiah and Ezekiel were sounding the alarm, warning the people that they were actually on the verge of divine retribution. As we peel back the layers of history at the Temple Mount, let's delve into how the hope for a third temple merges faith, prophecy, and intense political drama. Ancient prophecies bring new hope. The topic of the Third Temple is more than just a theological or spiritual discussion. It's an issue that touches on deep historical roots and has significant political implications. The construction of such a temple, or even the simpler act of re-establishing sacrifices on an altar, isn't just about religious observance. It's about identity, history, and territorial claims. The site itself is a focal point of religious and nationalistic tensions, representing not only sacred history, but also a battleground of current geopolitical conflicts. Discussions about building the temple weave together the threads of ancient prophecies, religious hopes, and modern-day political aspirations. For many, it represents a symbol of hope and restoration, a key to fulfilling ancient promises. For others, it's a potential flashpoint that could escalate tensions in an already unstable region. The debate extends beyond the confines of religious communities, influencing international relations and policy decisions. In the chapters 8 to 11 of Ezekiel, the prophet describes seeing something quite overwhelming: God's glory, packing up and leaving the temple. This was during Ezekiel's time in Babylon, where he landed after the Jews were rounded up for the second time in 597 BC. While he was there, he tried to keep people's spirits up by promising that the hard times wouldn't last forever. He told them that eventually God would come back and live among them once more. Then, in Ezekiel chapter 37, he throws out another interesting scenario with his vision of a valley filled with dry bones. Here, he pictures a dead and disjointed Israel coming back to life, piecing itself together bone by bone. It's like he's saying, "Look, we might be down now, but we won't be out forever." In chapters 38 and 39, Ezekiel predicts a huge fight between Israel and some bad news characters named Gog and Magog. In his vision, Israel comes out on top after this big battle. Then, in chapters 40 through 48, he switches gears and details a grand new temple that he says will be built in the 25th year of Israel's captivity. God's glory makes a grand re-entry in chapter 43, and the routine of sacrifices starts up again in chapters 44 to 46. By the time we hit chapters 47 and 48, Ezekiel is all about giving the land back to the people of Israel, as if returning a lost heirloom. In a detailed breakdown in Ezekiel chapter 40 verses 38 to 43, Ezekiel describes the temple's inner workings, especially where sacrifices were concerned. He lists where every table should go, how the offerings should be handled, and even the dimensions of hooks used for hanging meat. It's like a detailed blueprint for temple operations, focusing a lot on the practicalities of sacrifice procedures. Ezekiel's visions aren't just about bringing back the good old days. He's looking to include everyone in the future he imagines. This even means giving outsiders or Gentiles a stake in this new kingdom. He talks about transforming people from the inside out, giving them a new heart and a new spirit to ensure they follow his ways. Ezekiel chapter 36, verses 26 to 27. And in Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 22, he extends this inclusive vision to say that even those foreigners living among you are just like natives and should get a share of the land. As for the big temple vision, Ezekiel finds himself transported to a mountain in Israel where he spots a city. He meets a man there, looking like he's made of bronze, who shows Ezekiel around with a measuring rod and a linen cord, emphasizing the importance of every single detail of the temple. This vision stretches out over several chapters, where Ezekiel is tasked with measuring everything in this massive temple complex. But here's where things get sticky. Is Ezekiel's grand temple vision something we should expect to see in real life? Or is it more of a symbolic idea of what perfection might look like with God in the future? Whether this temple has already been built, is being built, or will be built, is up for debate. It depends on how you interpret these prophecies, literally or symbolically. Depending on your viewpoint, the fulfillment of Ezekiel's vision could be placed in different times like the church age, the millennium, or even something called the eternal state. Ezekiel's temple prophecy, filled with loads of detail and specific blueprints, has convinced some people that we should expect to see this temple built for real sooner or later. Because why would there be so much detail if it wasn't meant to be built? Yet, if we're really expecting to see this temple made of stone and mortar, then we must be talking about something in the future, because so far, nothing that matches Ezekiel's grand description in chapters 40 to 48 has shown up. In fact, the temple he described is way bigger than any temple that's existed, even the one from Jesus' time. Those who take the prophecy literally think this massive temple will pop up during the millennial kingdom, a time they believe will last 1,000 years when Christ rules on earth and saints from heaven live alongside regular people. Interestingly, not everyone during this time is expected to follow Christ. Many might choose not to. Now, we'll look into the puzzling idea of sacrifices in Ezekiel's visions, exploring why these rituals are discussed when many think they should be history. The consequences of old sacrifices. There's the matter of the sacrifices that Ezekiel talks about. This part is particularly concerning because, according to Christian teachings, Jesus already dealt with all our sins once and for all. So, why would we go back to sacrificing animals? The book of Hebrews, chapters 10, verses 1 to 4, hints that the old way of doing sacrifices was just a placeholder, a mere shadow of the good things that were to come with Christ. If those old sacrifices were effective, they wouldn't need to be repeated year after year. Instead, they just kept reminding people of their sins without really removing them. Because let's face it, how could the blood of bulls and goats take away sins? This leads to a softer way of looking at Ezekiel's prophecy. Maybe the sacrifices he describes aren't really for dealing with sins, but are more about remembering what Christ did on the cross, or just for ceremonial cleanups in the temple. Ezekiel's grand vision of the temple might not be about building an actual temple, but could be a vivid way to show the perfect relationship God wants with his people. He used the familiar imagery of a grand temple with regular sacrifices and a ruling Messiah, alongside a clear display of God's glory, to paint this picture. Later prophets added their own twists to the story, suggesting that the Messiah himself would do away with the need for a physical temple, sacrifices, and even the physical land. They predicted God's presence would be felt more directly than ever through the Holy Spirit living inside believers, a much more personal approach. So the fulfillment of Ezekiel's temple could be unfolding during what Christians call the church age and might reach its full glory in the future. Regardless of whether people believe Ezekiel's vision points to a real building project that's yet to happen or a symbolic depiction of divine intimacy, the core message of his vision remains that God hasn't abandoned his people. It's meant to be a solid promise that God plans to restore and elevate his relationship with them to new heights of glory and closeness that haven't been seen before. In essence, Ezekiel's vision encourages believers not to lose hope or doubt God's big promises, no matter how bleak or challenging the current situation might seem. Let's take a closer look at the Third Temple and the East Gate in Jerusalem with a bit of a skeptical eye. The hype around the gate often overshadows a simple fact: it's usually closed. History tells us it's rarely been open. Now that's making some folks rethink how important this gate really was in the stories from the Bible about Jesus and other temple-related events. As we shift our focus from the gate, we encounter the confusing challenge of figuring out where the temple actually stood. Despite the popular belief that the temple completely disappeared, there's a clue in the Bible, specifically 2 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 1. It mentions the temple being built on a threshing floor owned by Araunah. Threshing floors are basically open areas where people used to separate grain from chaff. Interestingly, the Temple Mount, right above the old city of David, kind of looks like one of these floors. It's a big, flat area of rock that could very well be the spot we're talking about. All this guessing and theorizing hasn't really helped us pin down the exact location of the threshing floor. It's frustrating because it shows how tough it is to link what we dig up today with the stories written so long ago. Every new idea or archaeological find just seems to add more confusion. This search is a small part of a bigger quest to piece together our history, make sense of it today, and figure out what it means for our future. Going deeper into the history of the Temple Mount and the city of David, there's a rich mix of stories and artifacts. The Bible says King David bought a threshing floor from the Jebusites, marking the start of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. This story is packed with tension and deals between the original Jebusite inhabitants and the new Israeli settlers. Some Jebusites fought against the new settlers, while others decided to stay and live under the new rule. This complex relationship helps us understand the land's layout, especially Mount Moriah's location. This area, lying just outside what was known as the city of Salem back then, is crucial to the story. At the heart of it all is a big flat rock under what's now called the Dome of the Spirits. It's believed to be the threshing floor King David bought. This rock isn't just another piece of the landscape. It's believed to be the foundation for the temple, marking the beginning of Jerusalem's transformation into a religious hub. The importance of this rock goes beyond its historical connection to King David. It acts as a solid piece of evidence, linking biblical stories to actual physical findings, helping us understand how ancient Jerusalem was laid out and built. Located right in the middle of the Temple Mount, this rock isn't just historically significant. It's been a central part of religious ceremonies and a key piece in understanding the city's layered history. As we try to connect these ancient stories with tangible evidence, we're reminded of the challenges historians and archaeologists face. It's a tangled web of old writings, physical clues, and lots of educated guesses. Despite the advancements in technology and archaeology, many questions about Jerusalem's past remain unanswered. We continue to uncover bits and pieces of the structure, hoping to get a clearer picture of how the city developed and what life might have been like during its peak periods. Next, we'll tackle the ongoing debates around the Temple Mount's history, where every new find sparks more questions about its rich past. Finding the temple's true spot. This search for the temple's exact location and the understanding of Jerusalem's historical layout aren't just academic exercises. They resonate with current cultural, religious, and political issues, influencing how people see the city today. Jerusalem remains a focal point of international interest and a symbol of ancient faiths and enduring conflicts. The history of the Temple Mount and the Dome of the Rock isn't just a simple story about a place. It's a complex web of religious meaning, changes over time, and lots of digging into the past. Since the Second Temple was destroyed back in 70 AD, this famous site has been like a giant project under constant renovation. Each new ruler or empire that took control of Jerusalem left their own mark on the Temple Mount, adding a layer of history and sometimes controversy. Initially, after Jerusalem was captured, the area changed hands several times, ending up under Byzantine control. Then came a shift to Muslim rule, which introduced new religious significance to the site, including the discovery of a notable stone. Early guesses suggested this stone was pretty special, possibly even a leftover from a temple that Emperor Hadrian, a Roman leader with big ambitions, had built. Hadrian was all about showing off Roman power and trying to push Jewish culture out of the spotlight. He built a new temple on the Temple Mount dedicated to Jupiter, a Roman god, in a clear move to mix things up and make a statement. Today, the structure of the Temple Mount, particularly the rock beneath the Dome of the Rock, sparks a lot of debates. People once thought this was the threshing floor mentioned in ancient texts, but its shape and size have led others to suggest it's been through a lot, built up, torn down, and built again, multiple times over the centuries. This story of endless construction and reconstruction gets even thicker with the discovery of parts that seem to match the descriptions of the Golden Gate, as told in ancient prophecies. These bits of evidence support the idea that there might be pieces of older temples hidden under layers of history, just waiting for archaeologists to find them. The Golden Gate itself is wrapped in stories and research, considered by many to be the real deal, the original Eastern Gate from the time of the Second Temple. Despite some experts arguing that the temple was actually where the Dome of the Rock stands now, many cling to traditional stories and historical accounts that say the gate lines up exactly with where the temple used to be. People really trust these old writings, believing they're as good as facts for uncovering historical truths. The specific setup of the Golden Gate matching the location of what might have been a threshing floor seems too exact to be a coincidence. Experts have even put numbers on it, calculating that there's only a 7% chance that this alignment is random. This kind of statistical analysis throws a bit of math into the mix, backing up claims about the gate's historical importance with hard data. But the debates about the Temple Mount aren't just academic squabbles or theoretical musings. They're filled with passion, scholarly competition, and sometimes a leap of faith here and there. Every new theory, dig, or interpretation adds to our understanding, but also stirs up more questions and debates. These discussions aren't just for the sake of history. They influence how we see the site today and play into broader conversations about culture, heritage, and politics in one of the world's most disputed areas. Understanding the Temple Mount involves peeling back layer after layer of historical, religious, and cultural narratives. It's like trying to solve a giant problem where every piece connects to modern issues and ancient identities. Each step in uncovering the site's past is a mix of excitement and frustration, as new findings light up possibilities but also challenge long-held beliefs. The idea that the Roman 10th Legion set up camp on the Temple Mount, transforming it into a military base, has been met with skepticism. Some critics pull out passages from religious texts and bits of historical data to argue that it was just a small troop, not a full legion, stationed in Jerusalem before the destruction of the temple. They emphasize this point because it suggests that the Romans were not there to maintain order, but to crush rebellions. They cling to this narrative to support their belief that the Temple Mount remained a place of worship, even under Roman control. Yet, the evidence of the Roman 10th Legion's presence on the Temple Mount after the Second Temple was destroyed is strong and varied. Drawing from historical texts by writers like Josephus, as well as archaeological finds of Roman tiles and other artifacts, historians have constructed a detailed account of Roman activity in Jerusalem. These finds suggest a long-term Roman presence at what was supposed to be a sacred site, significantly altering the historical perspective of the area. Those who argue against the idea that the Temple Mount was converted into a Roman fort often point to its design and size, suggesting it was built before the Romans arrived. They highlight the lack of significant changes to make it suitable for military purposes, as proof that it remained a religious site. The East Gate is also mentioned in this context. It was left out of Nehemiah's accounts of the temple's repairs, which they used to argue that the layout of the Temple Mount didn't change much from the time of the First Temple. On another note, the water sources believed to have been used for temple sacrifices are also a topic of debate. Some people challenge the notion that the Gihon Spring was the sole water source. They suggest a more complex water management system existed, involving aqueducts from the pools of Solomon and the Damascus Gate. This system wasn't just a simple one-shot from a single spring, but rather an intricate network of channels and reservoirs beneath the Temple Mount. This sophisticated setup questions the simplistic views of the temple's water sources and also raises doubts about the traditional understanding of the temple's geographical setting relative to modern landmarks like the Dome of the Rock. We'll now investigate the engineering wonders at the Temple Mount, showcasing how its sophisticated water systems met both daily and sacred needs. Hidden histories of the Temple Mount. Further extending the conversation, these water systems were not just functional. They were engineering marvels of their time, capable of supporting the extensive needs of the temple rituals. The variety and capacity of these systems were crucial, especially during large religious gatherings, when the demand for water was at its peak. The infrastructure likely included well-planned routes to ensure a steady and reliable water supply, disputing the simplistic notion of reliance on just one spring. Right under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, there's an old-school water system that really showcases just how clever people were back in the day. This system pulls water up from below, which kind of hints that the temple itself might have been lower down than we usually think. This setup wasn't just any old system. It included mikvahs, special baths used for ritual cleansing, that had a steady flow of fresh water, proving there was a dependable source of water right there. This whole operation, with its aqueducts designed to keep those cisterns filled up, shows off some seriously impressive knowledge of water engineering. We're talking about a setup that had to keep a bustling city going, making sure everyone had the water they needed for their daily lives and religious practices. Then there's the story about moving the Ark to the Temple Mount after everything was built up. This move wasn't just a simple relocation. It layered on a ton of religious and ceremonial importance to the site. It kind of cements the Temple Mount's rep as a major place for worship and deep spiritual meaning over centuries. Plus, the engineering marvels below, like the clever ways they managed water, weren't just practical. They were part of this grand spiritual narrative, integrated into the very fabric of the place. Looking at the wear and tear on the Golden Gate compared to other ancient structures from around the same era also throws a wrench in the works. It makes you pause and reconsider just how old this gate is, or even question some stories about where everything originally came from. It's like peeling back layers of an onion, finding more and more complexity the deeper you go, challenging what we've always been told about Jerusalem's architectural history and the big-name landmarks everyone recognizes. And then there's the whole debate about how close the temple really was to the Al-Aqsa fountain. This question alone makes you want to double-check the old writings and what the archaeological digs have been saying. Turns out the land right there isn't ideal for supporting a massive structure like a temple. This bit of info adds to the reasons why we should keep questioning and examining all the clues from the past, piecing together a clearer image from multiple angles. Comparing David Copperfield's trick of making the Statue of Liberty vanish to how we sometimes misread history offers a powerful warning. Just as the illusionist cleverly redirected his audience's focus to make the statue seem to disappear, focusing only on certain bits of historical data can skew our perception of what really happened. The Temple Mount is seriously significant in world religious history. It's respected globally as the place where God supposedly chose to set his temple, symbolizing a direct link to the divine that many hold dear. But the debates around building grand temples for old rituals or the prophecy about future calamities show that the Temple Mount isn't just a piece of land. It's a symbol packed with deep and lasting importance. Central to this site's appeal is its connection to Jesus Christ, whose actions and teachings there are pivotal in Christian stories. Christian stories paint a picture of Jesus as more than just a wise teacher who walked the Temple Mount. He's depicted as someone who challenged the established religious rules of his day. His warnings about the temple's eventual ruin are often interpreted as more than just literal predictions. They're seen as criticisms of old, rigid ways of religious thinking, suggesting that spiritual truths have a longer shelf life than stone and mortar. For Christians, Jesus is not just a historical figure. He's considered God in human form, sent to rescue humanity from its mistakes. His life, his execution, and his supposed resurrection aren't just events. They're viewed as the foundation of the Christian faith, offering a way for people to mend their relationship with God and secure a place in heaven. This belief system is built around the idea that recognizing Jesus as Lord and Savior is the key to receiving God's forgiveness and grace. So while the tales and symbols, like those connected to the Temple Mount, add richness to spiritual discussions, they also prompt us to scrutinize the accuracy of historical accounts and interpretations. This challenge is not trivial. It's about making sure we're not just swallowing a tailored version of events, but are striving to get a clearer, more comprehensive view of the past. It's like being in the audience of a magic show. While the spectacle is entertaining, we need to keep one eye on what the magician might be hiding. This means continually questioning and probing into the stories we're told, whether they're about physical structures like the Temple Mount or the foundational narratives of a faith. Could the Third Temple really bring about the prophesied events? Or is it merely a symbol of hope for believers? What do you think the future holds for this ancient and sacred site? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more insightful discussions like this one.